Hi, everybody. I'm Kraig Kann. Right now, on this edition of Tracks to Success, meet a woman who knows the definition of public relations. But more than that, she shines because she's creative, innovative, and she knows how to help other people take action and get results through storytelling. After years working for and promoting some of the biggest brands, she's now truly building her own as the president of her own company. Her name is Amy Littleton, and it's not a stretch to say that her vault to bigger name recognition is all because of how she's done it for others. Her inspiring story of success starts now.
Welcome to Tracks to Success. This is the podcast that brings you inspiring people and their inspiring stories, how they found their way to the top, and how their path can help you do the same. Here's your host, network broadcaster, C-suite executive, best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur, Kraig Kann.
Amy, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Been looking forward to this conversation. Hope you're doing great. Great to see you.
So good to see you too, Kraig. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited too. Let's begin with a little opportunity for you. All right. Giving you an opportunity for a PR expert, I'm calling you that, to spin herself. Okay. I want you to spin yourself. What went into the name of your company, which is Stretch PR? What went into that?
You know, honestly, it was an epiphany one day that I should name the company Stretch, but it is something that I've been saying to my teams and the people that I've managed and developed over my career for so long. You know, we always set goals for our clients. And it was always kind of like, okay, yeah, we want to achieve some media. We want to, reach some audiences, what it might be. But what's that stretch goal that we want to achieve? Like what's the one thing that's probably unattainable, but that we're really going to give it our best try? And so we would always kind of look for that one goal that takes it a step further. So when it just kind of came to me, I thought that would be a great idea for a PR agency. And I contacted a friend of mine who does, web development, design. And I said, hey, I've been thinking about, I'm going to start a company. I've been thinking about this name Stretch, and the domain was available, which was like, okay, then we're going with it. So it ended up being a perfect name.
Good for you. I actually have an executive friend who shared with me one time the story of trying to teach people to take on stretch assignments, okay? Assignments that would push them a little bit outside their comfort zone. So we're going to get into this whole conversation today and talking about some things about entrepreneurship and companies and so forth, where maybe they're outside of their comfort zone. And maybe this podcast is outside your comfort zone. If that's true, then we're good with that too. But I think it's an interesting time, Amy. Everybody out there has the opportunity to basically become their own PR agent because of social media. I want your take on that. Are you somebody who leans on social media as all that it can do, a great tool, or looks at it as, hey, there's a big risk?
So we run a lot of social media profiles for executives as well as on the corporate side. So I understand the value in business of social media. Now there's, obviously different social networks do different things, but from a business standpoint, LinkedIn is to me a very valuable tool for growing my business, for expanding my network, for just reminding people that I'm there and that I'm here and I'm smart and talented and hardworking and can do all of these things for clients and I'm building a great team. So it's a way to stay in touch. I'm a firm believer in its power. We also do a lot of work on brand activation in the sports space. So when you're activating a brand, if you're doing anything, at an event or on site, wrapping that with social media engagement is table stakes, and it's incredibly valuable because people want these, snappable moments, and you can really bring that to life and expand the reach of what you're doing. You might, engage 1,000 people on site and 15,000 people over social media or even more. So
Mm.
I find it hugely valuable for both reasons.
So in listening to that, I'm taking it that you are absolutely a believer and would tell our listeners and viewers, hey, you better take a good strong look at your LinkedIn profile or take a look at your posts on social media and what it says about you and then actually build from there. Is that correct?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is an incredibly valuable tool. I've given lectures on the topic of LinkedIn and using it as as your own kind of brand positioning. The other thing is people that work for companies and kind of have Outlook or whatever their company tool is for their email, and they put their contacts into Outlook. Those contacts stay with those companies, or you can steal them, but I wouldn't advise
Mhm.
it. The LinkedIn contacts that you make over your channels, anybody that you meet, you have a meeting with someone, I'm meeting with someone in 3 weeks. I've already connected with her on LinkedIn. Like, hey, let's
Mhm.
connect here
Mhm.
too. It gives them an opportunity to see you and get to know you a little bit. And then you take that contact with you. I'll be connected to that person forever as long as I can
Mm.
mine and kind of nurture that contact. I own it. So it is the new Rolodex, if anyone can remember that term.
Yeah. Oh boy, there's a blast from the past. Okay, let's talk about your career, you specifically, and let's take the term public relations and let's break it in half, if you will. Um, two words, two topics. Let's start with public. What would you say is the public image of you, or the public image that you're trying to put out there for you as an executive? Because I think people can benefit from this conversation.
I haven't actually thought about specifically trying to put a public image out there. I think the best public images are the ones that are authentically true.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I've done on especially my LinkedIn profile and just the communications that I have. It's from the heart. It's what's happening now. It's, engaging with people. It's delivering thought leadership and content, seeing something interesting and sharing it, trying to bring value to people. You know, one of my hallmarks, and my sister and I always joked when we were younger, like, we're really not that smart, but we just work really hard. We kind of pull the wool over people's eyes where it's like, hey, I just work harder than others. I would say I'm
Mhm.
not the smartest, but I'm the hardest working. And that's really been the recipe for success. So like a personal brand is just really hard, really smart working and delivering results. I always said to my teams, people don't hire agencies for how busy they are. Like we worked, we did a lot of work for you. Here's a list of activities we've done for you. They
Mhm.
hire companies that deliver results for them. So it doesn't matter
Mhm.
how busy you've been, and you can, complain about, oh my gosh, I've just been so busy. But at the end of the day, if you're not delivering results, you're going to get fired. And so that's kind of the baseline. And that's really how I've built my brand. And I've been so lucky to have clients that have wanted to work with me in the future and want to work with the people that I bring around me. So that's why, the company's been a success and it's been so much fun to work on. It's just, I have so much pride in what we've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I've known you for quite some time, and I think hard work is one thing, but the second part of this is the word relations. So if we do public and then we do relations, I think this is where you've really shined. Talk about the importance to you personally of building that network one relationship at a time, and why that's so valuable today. Whether somebody's 25 years old, fairly fresh out of school, or young in their career, or maybe they're older. Maybe they are 45, 55 years old, and why that is so valuable later down the line.
I remember when I first started my career and people would tell me it's so important to build your network. And I really didn't know what that meant. Because it's, you're kind of like, okay, like, hi, it's nice to meet you. But when you bring those people that you meet into your network, you put them in your LinkedIn profile, you keep up with them and stay in touch with them, all of a sudden you have a hugely valuable place. Like when I started my company, I went out to the market and said, hey, I'm starting a company. I'm bringing people on to work with me. I have a new business. And out of the woodwork came people that I worked with over many years ago that are like, hey, I'm so excited you're doing your own thing. Hey, can we talk? And that's because I built the relationship in the past. I stayed up
Mhm.
with people and I've always kind of opened myself up to maintaining those relationships. I mean, you and I got to know each other years ago, and we've always stayed in touch,
Right.
through the years. How can we help each other out? What's going on with you? What's going on with me? And I think that's what does it. I will never say no to someone who asks for help. Someone's like, hey, can you meet with my daughter? She just graduated from college. Or I've got someone in transition. Could you talk with them? I'll open my network up to anybody, just to help them. And I feel like what you give is what you get. And so it's really important to and that's how you build relationships, is you give to others and then you receive.
I think one of the biggest things we can do is not just build relationships. I'm not talking about collecting business cards, right? I'm talking about building relationships. And one of the things that I try to do on Fridays is connect with a couple of people. Doesn't have to be 10, but it's usually a couple that I'll reach out to, that I haven't spoken with in a while. And I think we get great benefit a lot of times, especially when you and I both run our own businesses, where you're calling and contacting somebody and you're not asking for anything. You're not trying to sell them on anything. You're not trying to recruit them for business. You're kind of just checking in. And I think that's a valuable thing that a lot of people could do. Your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. The other thing in the PR space, we're always looking at news and trends and things that are happening in the world. And a lot of times I'll see something and it will spark in my mind somebody that I know that this could be relevant for them. And I'll kick it over to them like, hey, I'm not sure if you saw this, but this is really interesting. I thought you'd enjoy reading it. And just those little moments, I think they go a long way, because people realize someone's thinking about me, and they're instead of thinking about themselves all the time. I think touching base and checking in is really important.
A quick minute to welcome a partner to the podcast and tell you about a great deal just for you. Here's a question. Do you wear hats? Of course you do. Then you need to know about Ahead. Ahead doesn't follow the trends, they set them, providing the best in headwear, styles, fabrications, and ornamentations for 25 years. And by listening to this podcast, you get a chance to save big. Visit aheadusashop.com and use the code TTS, that's Tracks to Success, to receive 20% off your order. That's aheadusashop.com and use the exclusive code TTS, 20% off, just for listening. Let's talk about your career path. When you were in high school or the teenager, take me to you growing up, and were you one of those people, now a successful executive, entrepreneur, running a business, worked for big firms, all that? Did you know that's what you wanted to do? Did you have that concept in your head and that drive long ago, or have you kind of stumbled into it?
Goodness, no. I grew up on the panhandle of Florida, in Panama City. So there's not a lot going on. I never expected to move to Chicago, move out of the panhandle. But my dad had some hard times when I was in high school, and lost his business. And I went to college with the thought that I would, have college paid for, and I would just be a college kid. But that didn't happen. I had to take out student loans, and I immediately started working my way through undergrad. And that's kind of where it was like school of hard knocks. All of a sudden, the harsh slap of reality, like, you got to pay for everything. What are you going to do with your life? And I think that's where I started to realize, I can do a lot if I want to. I got the opportunity to go to General Mills after I graduated from Florida State and do an internship. And so I took it and went up to Minneapolis for the summer. I was like, I had never been out of the Southeast. And that's what brought me to Chicago. And I put one foot in this beautiful city, and I was hooked. And I ended up planning, getting a little shoebox apartment and planning a route. And over all the years, it just became home. And it really made me realize, when you look at this big, beautiful city, that there's so much opportunity. If you work hard and are smart and go after it, you can do it, even if you are from a tiny town on the panhandle of Florida.
I've lived in Orlando since 1995, when the Golf Channel first launched, but I always say I'm from Chicago. and I'm proud of that city and all that comes with it. Who were your influencers growing up? Was it a family member? Was it somebody else that was truly a big mentor?
It was really my family members. My dad was an entrepreneur, and that I always looked up to him, as was my grandfather. My mom was an educator, but she also is a local legend in my area for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
And she's just a dynamo, and was on the school board and, all sorts of stuff. And then one of my greatest influences has always been my older sister.
Mm.
She's straight as an arrow, total powerhouse person. And I've always looked up to her and kind of aspired to be like her. And she and I have been super close my whole life. I would say those are probably my top three.
You worked in the big corporate world. Obviously, you found your way into General Mills as the intern, as you just talked about. You've had great influencers, as you shared. Um, Before starting your business, you spent a long time at Kemper Lesnick. That's a pretty big outfit. And you were one of their top people, top executives there. What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself? In other words, if I was saying to somebody else, Amy Littleton's calling card, the stamp she puts on this is this, I might have my opinion. What's yours?
I did really grow up at Kemper Lesnick. Steve Lesnick and Steve Skinner were really my career mentors. They had a lot on their plate, and I would just volunteer to do things as I was kind of young, getting into the agency business there.
Mhm.
And they were so gracious to just kind of give me the keys a little bit more over time. Once I continued to build trust with them, they
Mhm.
just let me run things. And I felt a lot of ownership over that business. And it's always been my pride and joy to be a part of that company. Um, and I think that the reason that they did that is that they could trust me to run things well, to be honest, to work hard, to deliver results. And they didn't have to worry if they said, I think we should do something, it was done. And that's kind of I think that's my calling card is just getting it done, and doing it well, and keeping a lot of balls in the air. I've always loved, and it was a very entrepreneurial environment, looking at the P&L, looking at hiring, going to get new clients, executing programs, when you're going in
Mhm.
a bunch of different directions. That has been very natural coming into my own business. The only itch I didn't scratch there was ownership. So it's kind of like, you know what? I want to do this for myself. I want to build an agency like this, but for me. And so everything that I learned there, I'm kind of transferred here, and I'm building it very much in that image. Um, and I think just being able to get it done and get after it and have the passion and tenacity. And, it probably took me 19 years to do it, to also have the self-confidence. So
Mm.
that was something that probably came, over time.
In addition to hosting this podcast, Kraig leads the Kann Advisory Group, focused on elevating communication for companies and individuals. Company consulting, team and individual workshops, mind-altering virtual programs. To learn more and to find out why the Elevate workshop has been labeled the most powerful experience in leadership communication, visit cannadvisory.com. And when you do connect, mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the interview.
We're talking with Amy Littleton. She runs Stretch PR. She is big supporter of Chicago. By the way, are you a Cubs fan, or are you America's team, as I like to say, the White Sox? It's
Ah,
been such a terrible, miserable year for us diehards. Go ahead.
it has been bad. I am definitely a Cubs fan.
Okay.
Although,
Okay.
I'm not a true Chicagoan, because I always say I like the White Sox too, but in Chicago, that's a big no-no.
You know what? I'm one of the very few. I do not root against the Cubs. I don't. I actually root for the Cubs, but I can't consider myself that person that when they got it done, just a few years back. I say just a few years back because that's after however many years of, futility. And all the people jumped on the bandwagon saying they were Cubs fans. You can't go there. That's not that cool. You talked about the hiring process. So let's talk about that a little bit. When people call you or they call your company and they get to you and they say, "Hey, Amy, we need a lift with our blank." What's the thing you hear most often? What do companies seek? What do individuals seek? Can you put it in a box and say it's pretty much the same thing, or no?
Well, there's two sides of the coin. The one side and the larger and more fun side is the growing audiences, building brands, building reputations, the proactive, let's engage as much as we can side. And that's the side that my agency plays the most on. The flip side is managing a crisis, managing an issue, working through a difficult situation, perhaps where you want to stay out of the media versus where you want to kind of get into the media. So there's really two sides of that coin. We work on the side of really building brands and reputations, and there's all of the tools in our toolkits. So clients come to us and to, the PR agency world to help them engage with their audiences. And they could be
Mhm.
stakeholders, they could be internal audiences, external audiences, media, investors, whatever it might be. How do we build more goodwill among those audiences? How do we, in the case of like brand activation, how do we get more people to touch and feel our products? How do we get more people to see us? Those are the challenges that we pretty much face every single day, and using the tools in our toolkit to try to solve them.
As you know, I do leadership communication workshops for companies and their people, helping them learn, as I like to say, to present the best of themselves and their organization, but seeing great value in how they put their voice and themselves forward. So let's talk about that and talk about brand for a second. I think a lot of people don't understand that their brand is not necessarily what happens in a room or on a stage, or in a meeting. It's actually, what I tell them is, it happens once they leave. What will people think about what they saw or heard? What will they feel compelled, and they have to be compelled, to share or talk about with other people? That's ultimately what your brand is. We live in this world of word of mouth marketing and conversation and a gossip filled society, all that sort of stuff. So help people out there, if you will, from your perspective of why putting time into your own brand is important today.
It is incredibly important, primarily because there is so much competition and clutter. There's so many people, and there's how many PR people are in the world? Why should people want to work with me?
Mhm.
I have to differentiate myself so that people will know the value that I bring, and they'll want to work with me above the 25 other PR people that are talking with them.
Mm.
Same thing for you. If you think about people that are helping people present better, helping them build their brands better, there's a lot of people out there that can do that
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
That you have to really, differentiate yourself, and your personal brand is how you do that. People need to see you being smart and getting after it and doing things that they think, I want a little piece of that. I want to have a little piece of that. And that's, I think it's critical. It's incredibly critical in our business. It's really the fundamental. And it's not a nice to have. It's really a must to have. I've met so many people that, oh, my LinkedIn profile, I don't really want to go in there. I don't know what to say, or I don't really spend that much time. I don't have a headshot, whatever it might be, all of those things. And it's like the cobbler with no shoes. That's a real problem for any executive, not just someone in marketing. You really have to be able to present yourself well. I've also seen where some people will have a job for a long time, and then all of a sudden they have to come out. They're like, they get laid off or something happens, and they don't have a bio. They haven't built their LinkedIn profile. They
Yeah.
don't have a great headshot.
Yeah.
It's like, you're kind of behind the 8 ball at that point.
Yeah. We have to be prepared for that long before we need the 911 call.
Right.
I get people that try to reach out to me and want to connect. And if they don't have a headshot, I don't do it because it shows me they don't care that much about themselves to begin with, or they don't look fondly enough on themselves that they could be a connection of value to each side. Or I'll reach out and say, guess what? I'd like to try to help you because
Mm.
you clearly need some help in this area. Let's take this whole conversation a step further. Let's work on the PR recipe for success. This podcast is called Tracks to Success. Let's help people get there. Companies, in short form, if we're going Cliff's Notes here, companies need to do what? They need to set themselves up to do what?
Companies need to communicate with their audiences. There is nothing worse than people that don't know what a brand stands for. They don't know what they do. They don't know their people. You're not going to be able to build a brand that has value unless you communicate with your audiences often and well. We see oftentimes that maybe a merger happens and the people that work for the company don't even know what's going on. The communication with your audiences, internal, external, is so incredibly valuable. It's not just words on paper, but it's multimedia. Using all the
Mm.
tools in your toolkit to communicate with your audiences in a multimedia format, meeting them where they are, is incredibly important. I mean, we have clients where a lot of their employees are on manufacturing floors. They don't have email. The best way to reach them is through Instagram or TikTok. There's a lot of ways to get to people and meet them where they are in the medium that resonates with them the most. You have to communicate with your audiences.
By the way, I love your TikTok platform, your personal one, and your Snapchat. It's really good. Are you on either of
Thanks.
those?
I'm on Snapchat.
Are you really? Okay, good.
Yeah,
I
we can
was
snap.
rolling. I was rolling the dice. I didn't think you were going to say yes to TikTok. By
Yeah,
the way,
no, I don't have a TikTok, but I do have Snapchat and I communicate with my nephews and my son and all the other folks. And it is kind of a fun platform, but it's not
yeah.
really for business.
I look at social media two different ways. There's the personal side and then there's the professional side. And I want people to know what I do, but I want to humanize it. I want to let them know what they're going to get if they get to work with me. And I get to work with them because I think that's really important. I don't have to, I get to. And I also think, by the way, you were talking about companies and we need to hear from them. We need to hear from the leaders. And a lot of leaders lead from the back. And I think they need to lead more from the front. I need to hear their voice. I need them to humanize their brand. Do you talk to CEOs and leaders about that as well?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, for me at Stretch PR, I'm kind of not struggling with, but that's something to juggle for me. I don't want Stretch PR to be Amy Littleton. I want Stretch PR to be a brand that stands on its own 2 feet.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have to build to get to that point because a lot of, our business right now is because of me and I'm
Sure.
heavily involved in most of our client work. But as we grow and continue to grow, I need to get great people on the bus that can carry that torch. So, sometimes you don't want your company's brand to be all about you. And then at other times it is really important where as the figurehead of the business, you're not necessarily executing the work. Professional service is a little bit different, but you're not necessarily executing the work. You need to be the voice for the business, the thought leader in the business, the expert on the
Mhm.
trends in the industry, the one that people look up to, what's going on, not only with your company,
Mhm.
but with the industry as a whole and out there as a leader and as, kind of showing the path forward in the industry. You're going to be the one that people look to as the leader and the one that as things change in your industry, they will look to you as what should we do? Where should we go? What is that company doing? You'll be the beacon and the North Star for the industry if you're out communicating from the front.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we've got the PR recipe for success for companies. Now let's talk about individuals, whether they're a rising star, all right, maybe they're younger in their career or they're a bit older. People always need a little bit of guidance, maybe a compass in some ways to try to do that. What's the recipe for PR success for the individual?
The recipe for PR success for the individual. I think I would say that just be authentic and don't be afraid to communicate. I know a very
Yeah.
young person in the insurance industry, and I've met a lot of young people in the insurance industry, and they don't know what to say on LinkedIn. They might post they change jobs or something like that, or like someone else's stuff, but they don't know what to post. But then there's other people who kind of get it, and it age, they go to an event, they'll talk about what they saw or learned at the event. They meet somebody, they'll take a picture and thank that person publicly. You know, they'll read a piece of a news story and think it's interesting and share that on their profile. I think that's all you got to do to start building your personal brand on LinkedIn as a
Mhm.
young person. You just have to think, I found something interesting in business. I'm going to share that with my network. There's something
Yeah.
cool that I did today. I'm going to share that with my network. Those are the kinds of things that get people seeing, oh, that's neat. You know, she went and she did this, or that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you just keep yourself top of mind with the people that you're connected to.
Looking for a guest speaker for your next event or annual conference? Kraig's message is inspiring and empowering. Visit kraigcanspeak.com to learn more about his topics and find out about his green shoe experience. It's a day your people will talk about long after he's gone. So visit kraigcanspeak.com and mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the show.
Before we go, a couple of things. Let's do a quick hit first. All right. I'm going to give you a topic, a quick question. You give me top ahead and no more than 30 seconds. Let's start with this because we've discussed it a little bit here. You decided to become an entrepreneur. All right. You probably had fear in that. What was the biggest fear you had in starting your own business? Aside from failure, probably.
Well, kind of hard to take failure out of the mix when you say the biggest fear. I would say the biggest fear is failure. I think that is what holds most people back. You know, you don't, I didn't really fail at anything before. You know, I was kind of like, oh, what if I don't do this, or what if I can't do this? I think the way to avoid that is to put it on the shelf. Like,
Mhm.
it exists, let's be honest, but we're going to put that over here for now and just go get it done. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, okay, actually, I think I'm doing okay. You know, like, you can keep it up,
Mhm.
but I think people, and certainly people that I've talked to since I started my company, they're like, oh, I could never do that. You know, I would be too scared to do it. And I think, you know, self-confidence, believing in yourself that you can do it, just putting one foot in front of the other. And I've said it a bunch over the past year and a half. I'm just putting one foot in front of the other. I don't know where we're going, but we're just going to keep moving forward. Trying to avoid letting the fear consume you. Our business is pretty straightforward. I think I can understand it. I'm not building rocket ships here. I just need to put one foot in front of the other and believe that I can do it and get good people around me to help me do it.
Okay. Rapid fire on this one. The big thing you're most proud of in your career is what?
The big thing I'm most proud of in my career is working with people, both, you know, people that worked for me in my company and clients that worked for me in the past, to choose to come back to work with me. Now that
Yeah.
I'm in this new situation, and to have, you know, all of these new opportunities, to have people believe in me. I mean, I work with large public multinational companies, and I've been around for less than a year and a half, you know, as a company, but they know me and they put their trust in me. And that's been the biggest blessing of this entire thing. That's always shocking to me. And I'm just incredibly thankful that that they have chosen to work with me, and they know that I'm gonna do it for them, even though I'm a fledgling company, essentially.
The quick hit advice for somebody who says, you know what, it's just not my thing. I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't want to celebrate myself. What do you tell them?
Well, I think it's a balance. I don't think it's bad to celebrate yourself. I don't think it's bad to share celebration with others. People are rooting for you. Of course, there are people that might not be rooting for you, but for the most part,
Mhm.
people want to see you be successful, as just as you want to see them be successful, and it's okay to share. I do think it's a balance. I don't think it's necessarily, you know, celebrate yourself all the time, because that can get
Mhm.
tiresome. But it, you know, and everyone in the communication space, it's all about what is in it for me. So if you can provide value to others, if you can share an interesting story with them or teach them something they don't know, that's a way to also celebrate. Like as an example, a colleague of mine spent time with Whirlpool Corporation the other day building washing machines, powerless washing machines, because there's a
Mhm.
big project that Whirlpool has with the washing machine project to bring powerless washing machines to people in other countries that don't have access to electricity. We built those machines on the manufacturing floor, and I posted about it on LinkedIn and got so much incredible feedback about it. But I also taught people, like, there's a huge problem around the world. 60% of people don't have access to electricity, and the
Mhm.
women and girls are the ones that suffer.
Yeah.
So I was kind of also talking about how cool of an experience it was for me, but also driving value to other people, making them aware of an issue they may not have known before.
You and I spent some time working together when I was at the LPGA running communications there for 5 years. We didn't have a true marketing department or big marketing budget, and communications and the opportunity to get media became marketing for us. You guys actually helped. And that's where you and I really spent some time together. We've known each other for a while. Um, I want to just very quickly dive into communication, message, and then the marketing of said message, right? Those two things have to work together. I think you're really good at it. What would you tell people about knowing their own story and knowing their own message and being able to market themselves?
The key is to understand your home base message. There's always messaging around whatever you're working on, whatever program you're working on, but there's always that home base message that takes you back to the core of what you're doing, why you're doing it, why it's important to you,
Mhm.
why someone else should care about it. So when we talk about messaging, whether it's an individual or a business, it is about all the things that you want to communicate, which are very important, and the proof points behind those. But what's
Mhm.
ultimately important is that main message that gets to the why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
We did media training a couple days ago, and the message was to protect what is most important. Like, we do all these things, we have all these things. Why? To protect what's most important. And that's your home base. That's where you go back to every time because it gets you centered on what you're trying to do. So we talk, for individuals and companies, it's really important to not only tell your story, but also to understand where that foundational message, your home base is.
Okay. Last thing, you talked about Whirlpool. Sorry to use the brand name, but I just used it. All right, so we're going to go spin cycle here. Last thing, and I want you to help people on the way out. All right, this podcast is called Tracks to Success. What I tell people is tracks to success, not a straight line. And you mentioned earlier something that I talk about, amazing our synergy sometimes, about when things go wrong and people get furloughed or you've lost a job or you're trying to get to the next level because it's not working out, and you need to kind of dive back into where your superpowers are or what's in your toolbox and continue to grow. So I'm assuming you agree that the career journey is not a straight line and we have to be prepared for the pivot. So,
Mhm.
with that being said, what is, in your opinion, the most valuable skill that somebody can have in that toolbox for them moving forward?
I would think that not waiting till that moment that you get laid off and need to then go back and communicate and figure out what your path is, but to make sure that all along the way you're cultivating those relationships and you're putting
Mm.
yourself in a position where if that ever does happen to you, you have a cadre of people that will help you out. I had a guy that I had known a long time in the PR space. He worked for a big company. This was years ago. I kept trying to get to have a meeting with him. Like, hey, I know you're over here now. Let's have a meeting. Never gave me the time of day. Never returned my calls. Never sent me emails back. Never took a meeting with me for all those years. But what happened when he got laid off after like 15 years at his company? Who did he
Rang you.
call? Sure did. Rang me right up. But you can believe I didn't help him out. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
I've tried all these years for you. When I needed you, even to just say, hey, listen, we're not going to hire you right now. We can't do
Yeah.
it. You never had the, wherewithal to do that for me. And now you're going to call and ask for a favor. That's the kiss of death. If that's where you are in your career, where you never gave anybody the time of day while you were riding high, and all of a sudden that you need something, you're going to try to make calls. It's not going to go over very well.
Yeah.
So when people ask for help, when people reach out, do them the courtesy. You think you're riding high now, eventually you won't be. And you'll need to pivot, and you'll need to fall back on those folks, and you'll need to be able to call them and say, hey, I just got laid off. I would love a conversation. And, since you gave me the time of day back in the day, let me help you as much as I possibly can. It is a two-way street, and you have to give in order to receive.
This has been a great little dialogue of give and receive. I really appreciate it. And I was looking forward to the conversation before. You're going to do great things. You're already doing great things. And I've been watching it from afar and a little bit close up. This has been awesome. And I know a lot of people listening and watching got a lot out of this. So I appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much for having me, Kraig. I really appreciate it.
Time now for our closing segment. We call it Getting Ahead. My thoughts on helping you find your track to success. And it's brought to you by Ahead. If you're looking for the best in headwear, Ahead has you covered. From a robust collegiate collection with more than 30 universities to choose from, to styles featuring golf legends Palmer, Nicklaus, and Sorenstam, to fits for all 6 teams in the new TGL Golf League, visit aheadusashop.com. That's aheadusashop.com and use code TTS at checkout. Receive 20% off your purchase. That's aheadusashop.com and code TTS for 20% off. Had a great time talking with Amy. I think she has so much great insight into the world of public relations, marketing, and building personal brands. As we talk about getting ahead, here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the word activation. That's a word that she used. And I think it's important for us all to think about how we can build something for ourselves and then activate that. So let me give you an example. I think each and every one of us is creative, and each and every one of us comes up with ideas. So I'm going to share a little story with you. Years ago, when I was working at the LPGA, we had a staff meeting beginning of the year, and I gave everybody on my team a light bulb, and they couldn't figure out what it was all about. My point was this: we all have those light bulb moments, right? The great idea, how we can be better, how I can do something differently, where my career might go, et cetera, et cetera. The key is taking the great idea and then activating it. Can we get people to follow our lead? So if we're trying to get ahead, we need to think about the great ideas that we can own and then how we can put them into motion. That's important. If we want to get ahead, we need to be creative, but we also need to be able to activate and build a following. And that's something that Amy and I talked about during the show. If you do that, I think your tracks to, oh God. How about that? I wonder if there's a way for me to save that. Probably not. Probably not. It'll be weird. I'm going to do it. I'll do it in 3, 2. I always enjoy talking with Amy. Hope you enjoy the conversation. And now, as we talk about getting ahead, I want to focus on a word that she and I actually just talked about a little bit. And that word, if you listened carefully, was activation. Now, I think that can apply to all of us. We have to think about, in building our brand, how we can activate our strengths, our differentiators, and put them into the marketplace to help us in our career. So let me give you an example. Let's talk about creativity for a second. Each and every one of us comes up with really good ideas. In fact, when I was at the LPGA years ago as the chief communications officer, during our staff meeting at the beginning of the year, I gave everybody on the team a light bulb. And they were kind of like, what are we doing with this? My point was, at some point, your light bulb is going to go off. a great idea, something we need to do to become better, something you can do to add more value, whatever that might be. As a collective team, if we put all those light bulbs together, we can get great results. So creativity is one thing. The light bulb moment or idea is very important, but we have to be able to activate it. So as you look toward getting ahead, I want you to think about how you can activate your best ideas in your own career. Spend time thinking about yourself, and then think about not only how you're going to put that into motion, but who you'd like to take on the journey with you. And if you can do that, your tracks to success will be a whole lot easier. I hope you enjoyed the show. Until we meet again and have another conversation with a great guest, let's stay connected.
Don't forget to subscribe to the show for more great interviews and Kraig's thoughts on reaching your highest personal and professional summit. Find it wherever you get your podcasts and on the Kraig Kann YouTube channel and kraigcanspeak.com.